All right, I'm going to be going back and forth then between the homework page here and the actual programs. Okay? Now, we went over these terms to review, so I'm not going to go over those again. If you want to, you don't. It says to complete these, but I'm not making you do this. So I'm just going to start right here. Write a console program that converts distances to miles from miles to kilometers. So we have to come in here and declare a constant called km per mile and initialize it to 1.6. We have to prompt the user for a distance in miles, and then we have to do the math. In other words, we have to take the miles and multiply it by the constant. And then finally, we have to print out the results. All right? Hopefully, at least you found that one pretty straightforward. So I'm going to bring mine up here. Now notice again, I've got a folder or a solution here called labs. All right? I'm going to have one called labs, one I'm going to call homework, and one I'm going to call hots or hot. All right? And I'd like you to do the same thing. I've been working this morning, if you heard my mail going off from my alerts, I've been working with people from Github, and I think we finally figured out the problem with my account. Somehow, it took an old password and it had cached it, and it wouldn't let me change it. But the guy showed me how to clear that part out. I had to go into Windows Credential Manager, and it appears to be working okay now. So that said, I'm going to start from the beginning. So here's the miles converter. All right, so the program is right here. Again, I just grabbed that information that was shown, and I used that as a comment. To me, that made sense. It looks a little nicer, etc., to do that. So I've got that at the beginning. Then, even above main, I could have made this in main, but I didn't. That's where I declared the constant. Again, when you declare a constant, it's const, followed by the type of variable. So in this case, I made it a double. It should have either been a double or a float. I guess you could have probably made it a decimal as well. But I just tend to use doubles all the time. I'm not real sure why. I guess it's because that's what it seems like most people use. So I've got two variables that I created for the program. One called miles, one called kilos. All right. And I mean, I could have called it kilometers. I didn't. So what did I do here? This is the whole program. I did a write statement that said input a value representing miles. All right. And then miles equal convert.toDouble readline. Now that means this program will blow up if I put something non-numeric in there or I leave it blank. We're going to learn how to fix that soon. Not yet. All right. And then we do the math. So kilos equals the miles times that. And then I wrote it both out. So this should say exactly what it said up here. So if I run this and I type in 3 for my miles, it should say 3.0 miles equals 48.0 kilometers or whatever the heck it was, 4.8 kilometers. All right. So let's take a quick look and see if indeed that happens. First, any questions on this? Anything that I did that you didn't do or any problems you had with this? All right. Well, then let's run it. And I got to make sure I set that to my start project. And it's miles converter, so set a startup object. And I know it's hard for you to see, but it just says here, input a value representing miles. There should be a way that I can go in here and make this bigger, but I don't know what it is offhand. So I'm going to put in 3, hit enter. It comes back 3.0 miles equal 4.8 kilometers, which is exactly what we were told it was supposed to say. Now, one thing about this, and this is what we're going to be going into in the next couple chapters, all right? But if I come through here and I say something like this, I'm going to grab all of this information that you see right here, and I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. In fact, yeah, you'll see why in a minute. So I'm going to say this, and I'm going to put in here while kilos. I don't want to do it like that. I can put a while loop in here that's going to allow me to do this again and again and again. To do that, I was going to introduce using Boolean flags and stuff, but since we haven't talked about that yet, I'm not going to do that. But the point is, I could run this program, if by putting it into a loop, I could run the program again and again and again. We're going to be going into that in the next few days. All right. Any questions on this first problem? Anything? All right. So then let's go to the second one. And the second one was this thing for raises. Now, I got a little weird with it last night. What I mean is my output looks virtually identical to what it is here. So I had to go doing a lot of jacking around with tabs and spaces, etc., to get it to look like that. But I just want to show you, and again, I realize it resonates very small on the screen, and I get that. So it'll be very hard for you to see, but it does look virtually the same. All right, so let me open that one, and let me set that to my start project as well. And all I'm going to do to start with is I'm going to run it. So it says their input employee name, and it was Jim, 10,000. Oh, it should have been 10,000, but it's fine. What was it? It was Fred, 20,000, and Will, 30,000. And there it is. Oh, I guess I was off by one here. Sorry about that. But you can see, hopefully, and again, I realize it doesn't resonate very well. I get that. But what I want to show you, and this is kind of an important thing in here. Again, I grabbed all the information from there, including the actual chart or whatever you want to call this itself, and I put it in here. Now, did you have to do it the way I did it? No. Is this a good way to do it? Hell no. All right? Because what do I have here? 3 names, the salary for the first year, for the salary for the second year, the salary for the third year. Then the second employee, first year, second year, third year, and the third employee, first year, second year, third year. A better way to do this would be to create a minimal number of variables and put this into a loop. All right, where we would run it basically, in this case, 3 times. I mean, imagine if we had 100 employees. I sure wouldn't want to have this. You see how long it is already for 3. Imagine that multiplied by 33 1/3. That would get really long. So what we will get into in not too long a time is we'll talk about, for example, how to use things like arrays. You gentlemen have already worked a little bit with arrays. We will work with them again. And it'll allow us to basically set a size at the beginning of the program, put it in a loop, and run it as many times as we want to with a very minimal amount of code. Whether that's 3 times or 3 million times wouldn't really matter. Except 3 million times would take us a long time to input the data, but you get the point. All right. The hardest part of this program, you'll notice I'm doing this 3 times. So I did put it down on the page and I tabbed it over just so it wouldn't be shoved in the upper left-hand corner. But it says input employee 1 name. And I did a read line. Then input the salary. Well, the salary goes in as a string, so I convert it to the double. Then how do I do the math? I say for year 2, it's year 1 plus year 1 times that % raise. All right, is that the only way to do it? Hell no, and that's not the way I would have normally did it. All right, I would have said, I would have taken that salary and just immediately multiplied it by 1.04. But we were told in here to have a named constant called % raise, which I do. So that was one way of doing it with the requirements that we were given. Now, you will find that sometimes as either a programmer or a web developer that does programming, all right, that you will be given requirements. And sometimes you'll think to yourself, this is stupid. But if it's somebody who's either paying you as your contracted employer or your boss or the customer you're working for, you, of course, never want to say that. You might want to let them know, hey, there's a better way of doing it. But that's, again, that will always depend. Now, one thing about this is, what if you're a contractor and you contract yourself out to some company and you're going to write for them some kind of a system that's going to do something. Okay, everything's fine and dandy. They give you a set of requirements and you look at them and you think to yourself, well, that's stupid. That's stupid. That's stupid. Okay, I can do all this, but a lot of it's really stupid. My recommendation is don't say a word, because later they'll discover it was stupid and they'll bring you back to do maintenance work, and then you'll get paid more money. All right? Now, if you say to them, hey, this would be a little bit more work, but I could also do this, 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 and this, and it wasn't on your list of requirements, what do you think they're going to say? Yeah, do that. I'm not going to pay you anymore, but yeah, do that. I've been in that situation. You guys may have heard me say this last semester. I don't remember. But every year, I try to have students in the AWD1000 class, the one you typically take first semester, do some kind of a project for a nonprofit. And I did that at the school I used to work at. And one year, we all did a website for a senior citizen home. All right, and they did not have a website. So they told us exactly what they wanted. And I said, okay, just so you know, I want a full list of requirements, and I don't want them to deviate. We can change colors and fonts and whatever, but I want these to be the requirements. They were like, totally fine. They gave me the requirements. I gave them to the students. They liked one of the students, and they chose him. Boom, he's going to build it. Until he started building it, and then they kept calling us in. Hey, could you also do this? Hey, could you also do this? And finally, the student came up to me and he said, hey, I don't mind doing this stuff, but I'm taking other classes and it's taking a lot of my time and I'm not getting paid to do this. So we went and met with them and I finally told them, I said, hey, we're going to put in all the requirements you asked for. We're not going to do anything else. We just have to cut it off at a certain point. Now, if you decide you want to hire this person afterwards and have him do some work for you, he is amicable to doing that. Well, right away, we don't have money for that. We don't make. I said, okay, but then you're going to get what you've asked for right here. And would you believe they called me at least a half dozen times after that? Finally, I gave him the kids, the guy's email address. I said, his name was Trevor. I said, you contact Trevor if you want any more. And I guess they were a little miffed. But that's, so it depends. You can deal with people like that. All right. So even though I think this is a stupid requirement, it's the requirement that I'm given here. So I did it that way. All right. So I do the exact same thing 3 times. Input the name, do the read line, input the salary, do the convert, figure out the year 2 and the year 3. Again, since I'm doing all this, it would have made more sense to do it in a loop. But since we haven't talked about loops yet, we're not going to do it in a loop. All right. And then the third one. This was the thing that took some time, as you might guess. You might say, well, it looks like it wouldn't have taken you that much. Yeah, it took a while. It took about an hour. And you can see, again, I still was off by 1 space. All right. When I ran this and you saw it, so again, it was Jim, 10,000, Fred, 20,000, and Will, 30,000. All right. I guess it had to do with the number of letters that were in the name. So now it really does map up virtually exactly. But if I put a real long name in there, if I put Jonathan, etc., that first line is going to look all screwed up. You understand what I'm saying? Now, how could I fix that? I could say the first name has to be 4 characters long. And if you put any more in there, I could cut it off. And if you put less in there, I could pad it with blanks. If you just put Ed, for example. Okay, so we could do it that way. There's a lot of different ways this could be done. Looking at it, it looks like the will, that should be moved over 1 space. But that isn't too bad. All right. Again, the point is there is not a lot of smarts to this program. All right. But it's written in a kind of foolish way right now. Do you all understand what I mean by that? All right. All right. So let me close that one and go to the next one. So I'm going to close this as well. And we are told then for the third one, This probably, this should have taken almost no time at all. And I'm not supposed to say this, but if you know this one, this will be pretty much one of the questions on your test tomorrow. All right. So write a console program that calculates the average grade for a student, prompts the user for 4 test scores, and displays the average of the entered test scores. When you're doing this and you're running it, when you run it the first time and you try to test it, I'd put in something that would be pretty easy to test, like maybe 10, 20, 30, and 40 or something like that. So if I add 10 and 20, that's 30, and 30 is 60, and 40 is 100. Divided by 4, the average should be 25. I mean, I wouldn't put in like 68.43. You could do that, I guess, but, first of all, I would never give you a test grade like that anyway. All right, so for that one, I just called it grade form or something like that. Average grade. All right, pretty simple specs. And so what do I have in here? I was going to put in constants, but we weren't asked to do that, so I just pulled them out. Now, the bad news about doing it like that is now it'll take negative grades, and it'll take grades that are like, if I put 1 million in there, it'll take that, which would, as you probably guess, kind of skew your grades. But we're not worried about that right now. We will get to all that stuff at a later time. All right. So, again, very simple. Enter test score 1, enter test score 2, enter test score 3, and enter test score 4. I think I've told you this already, but on the off chance I did not, \n is a new line. It's like you hit the enter key. All right, it's a carriage return line feed type of thing. And \t is a tab. So all I did was try to make sure that when you ran it, it wasn't in the upper left-hand corner of the screen where it is by default. Now, so if you say, well, do we have to do that tomorrow? No. As long as I can run your program and it appears on the screen, I don't care where the heck it is. All right. So what do I have in here? There's the first score, the second score, the third score, the fourth score. Now, notice I made another thing called point tote. You didn't have to do this. And down here, after I enter the 4 in, I said point tote equals score 1 plus score 2 plus score 3 plus score 4. Everybody see that? And then my calculation is real simple. If I didn't want to have a point tote, if I didn't want to do that, all right, I could have just instead, I could have said the average is equal to score 1 plus score 2 plus score 3 plus score 4 divided by 4.0. I could have done that as well. It would have worked just fine. All right. I just broke it out into 2 steps as opposed to 1. If you did it this way, you would have to use the parentheses. If you didn't do that, it would take score 4 and divide it by 4 and then add score 1, score 2, and score 3 to it. That's why you test programs. All right. So I just decided it would be simpler to break it up into 2 steps. And again, whether you made it 1 step or 2 step, that doesn't matter. All right. So we input, we convert. We input, we convert. We input, we convert. And what you're seeing right now is we're using that convert.toInt or convert.toDouble. The time's going to come pretty quick. We're not going to use that very much. We're going to use try parse, which means attempt to do it. Why? Because that way, if it doesn't do it, we can tell it exactly what to do. Right now, with a convert, we can't. You've seen this already, but just to show you again, I'm going to run it twice. So if I run it, whoops, it didn't have the right startup project, so let me set that. All right. So test score 1, like I said, 10, 20, 30, and 40. Print them all out. The average is 25. That's all fine and dandy. But if I run it again, and for the first one, if I put in hello and hit enter, it's immediately going to blow up. We have no control over that happening. Now, in a later chapter, we're going to talk about the stuff that's down here. This is called your locals window. And we are going to go into that more depth and breadth of coverage. We'll go into it a little bit in one of the next chapters, and there's a whole chapter on it in about chapter, I don't know, 10 or something like that. So we will talk about that stuff. But the program now is blowing up, and it's even telling you why it's blowing up. It's letting you know, well, it's not letting me move that, but it basically, there it is. It's letting us, it had let us know, and I stopped it, but it was saying, hey, you know, you basically tried to take a blank and convert it into a number. In fact, it wasn't a blank, it was the word hello. So if I run this again, I'm going to move this now, and I'm going to put in here nothing. I'm just going to hit enter. There you go. Input string was not in a correct format. That's not really a bad error. The problem is it's what's referred to as a non-recoverable error. In other words, the program right now is dead in the water. We don't typically want that to happen. If somebody accidentally fat fingers and they're putting in a grade and they mean to put in 100, but they accidentally put in 100 and they hit the letter P on the way down, we don't want the program to stop. Right now, it will do that. All right. Any questions on that program? Anything that doesn't make sense on that program? And let's take a quick look at the last one, which was Pig Latin. Close this. Now, I'm going to show you in here because there's a couple different ways of doing this, at least. Virtually every time you do a program, there's almost an unlimited number of ways of doing it. All right? And the way I do something and the way you do it may be drastically different. That's not even a bad thing. You know, I've used this type of example before. I mean, imagine you were coming into class the first day, and let's say let's just pretend it would never happen, but let's pretend that you're all coming in here for an art class. All right? And the first day of class, I walk in here with a big bowl of fruit, and I put it down there, and I say, you have 2 hours. I want you to create that. I would think your paintings are not going to all look identical. Some of you might pick out maybe there's a big apple or a big orange or a big banana, and maybe you concentrate on that. Somebody else might look at it differently. Programming works the same way. You're all looking at the same thing. You're all getting the same requirements, but you're probably coming up with a different way of getting there. All right. So this was again, the comment, the Pig Latin thing. I tried to keep it simple, but I wanted to show you 2 different things on here. So I created, you weren't told to do this, but I created a string, constant string suffix that I put on the end that was AY. You didn't have to do that, but that's the way I did it. All right. So what I wanted was I wanted to be able to input a word, and I wanted to be able to grab the first character of the word. Does that make sense to people? So if I put hello in there, my word is hello, and my first letter is H. Once I get that, I want to grab that first letter, and I want to pull it off of there, but I want to keep it. That's what first char is. And then I want to put it on the end and add to it the suffix. That's how I approach this program. All right. So I said here, enter any English word. Now that said, you could put garbage in there. How do you enforce something like that? All right. So word equals read line. There's no conversion to be done because it's already a string. So that works fine. Then I said for the first character, convert, go in there, and they said you might want to use that word substring that was put in there as a hint. This says, if I put in hello, so I type in hello, just so you know this, you're going to find this out a lot in computers if you haven't heard it already. This is actually there. That's position 0. It's not position 1. And there's a lot of internal reasons why it's that, but when we work with arrays and other things, that'll be position 0. So the reason I'm telling you that is this line that you see in blue right here says what I want to do is I want to grab, starting at position 0, I want to grab one character, I want to convert it to a char, and I want to put it into first char. So that should be grabbing that H. Now my word still is hello, but I now have just the H. So in the next line that you see there, I removed and did it the same way. I told it to go into Word, which is still hello, and start at position 0, which is the H, and remove it. So now it's hello. I still have my H, that's in my other variable. Okay? Then I said that word is now the word plus the first character, which I converted to a string, plus the suffix. All right? That, to me, was the most straightforward way of doing it. But I want you to understand something. You're going to probably find this confusing if you've never worked with arrays before. But technically, if you've got a string that looks like this, hello, what that string is it's really made up of the characters H, E, L, L, and O. That's really what it is. The reason I'm telling you that is if you look up on the screen here and you look at the line of code that I've got commented out, what I did was I said we could have also said first char equals, and that would have been this. Again, just to show you that there's two different ways of doing this. All right? And I also wanted to mention to you, show you this quickly. I mean, how did I figure all that stuff out? I don't remember this stuff. I will tell you, you probably have heard this before. Growing old is a bitch. All right? You start forgetting stuff. It's a pain in the butt. All right? But it's happening. There's not much that I think of I can do about it. I see these commercials on TV for Prevagen, if you've ever seen those. I asked my doctor about that when I went in for my physical, and he goes, to me, if you can buy it, but all you're doing is you're making the people who make that, you're making them rich. I said, what does that mean? He said, I can show you studies. There's none of that stuff has ever been proven to work. I said, well, you got all these people on TV. He said, yeah, in their minds it might work, but technically it doesn't do anything. So, all right. But what I did was I came in here and I literally keyed in C# substring method because that's what we were told that we could use. And you'll notice what came up first. Lo and behold, docs.microsoft.com. So I went over to that. And this is the way you're typically going to see the documentation in here. String.substring. Well, whenever I see that, I'm probably at least like you are in that I don't care. I just want you to show me a frigging example. So that's typically what I'll do is I'll go down because most of this stuff that you'll see in the documentation, it'll give that to you. Now, earlier today, I showed you the W3 Schools tutorial. All right, probably that would have been in there someplace. So you can get as granular as you want when you're searching this stuff. But, again, when you look in here, you'll know real quick. This Geeks for Geeks, it's a very good site. They've got good stuff in there. C# Corner is an excellent website. All right, but there's all sorts of different stuff in here. All right, many of these things I have not looked at. And again, what did it find? 962,000 results. Well, good luck with that. All right, but as I've told you before, quite often, the first one that you find in there will be docs.microsoft.com. All right. Now, I just want to make sure one more time that you hear this. You will be taking a test tomorrow. There'll be 4 problems on the test. Each problem is, in fact, maybe I'm wrong. There's 3 problems on the test. That's it. All right. And the first one, basically, if you know how to write your entire name in a program, that's pretty much going to get you 25 points. The second one, if you know how to do an average of a few numbers, kind of similar to what you just did, that's going to get you 25 points. And the third one, basically, you're going to ask somebody how much of a product or something they want to buy. You'll ask them their name, their address, city, state, zip. How many of an item do you want to buy? And then you'll figure out what, so if it's $10 and there's 8% tax. So if they buy 5 of them, what it'll be. 10 times 5 will give you a subtotal, 50. You'll take that 50 and multiply it by 8%. That'll give you 4. You add the 50 and the 4, and it'll give you $54 that you owe. All that makes sense? That's pretty much it. All right, especially this first test in here is not meant to be rocket science. That problem is worth 50%. I am going to ask that you make it look exactly like it is in there. So if you run it, there is a screenshot for that one. There's no screenshot for hello followed by your name or the average problem. But there is a screenshot for that one. And I will ask that when I run it and I put in that stuff that's shown in there, the output looks exactly like what's shown. All right. My guess, like I said, if you had no problem doing this today, and other than spacing things, or maybe you had some problems with the Pig Latin one, I don't know. But if you could do the other ones, you shouldn't have a lot of problems with this tomorrow. Now, that said, because we've talked about this before, and I want to make sure you see this. All right. So after tomorrow, we're done with section 1 of the book. All right. We'll have been here a week. We've got a whole section done already. Now, pretty much most of next week, we're going to be working on this, on 4 and 5. Whoops. And I think I've already told you this, so we'll be working on 4 and 5. Then we'll take another test. Then we'll do 6 and 7. Then we'll take another test. Then just 8. That's a raise. And we'll take another test. Then 9, 10, and 11, and we'll take another test. I don't know where that'll put us time-wise. We'll see. But again, the goal is, by the time we break, we're also going to go through this. This is the hardest part of the book, in my opinion. We are not going to cover every single thing that's in there because, I think I would lose you, to be honest with you. There's some stuff in there. I'm still amazed when I run it that certain things work in certain ways. All right. And then that should get us to when we break, which is the last week in March. Then when we come back, we're going to hit on this real hard and do some of the stuff that's in here. All right. I think I've already told you that, but just so you know. But so what is this? Why am I even telling you this? Well, if you look here, this is chapter 4. So come Friday, not tomorrow, but Friday, this is what we're going to talk about. Some of this stuff we've already hit on. They're going to talk about the different types of numeric values. They're going to talk about different things you can do with strings. You've already seen some of that stuff. All right, so it shouldn't be a big surprise to you. Hopefully we can go over that chapter, and I'm not going to say fast, but let's just say fairly quickly. Thought it was that page, maybe it wasn't. Come on. There we go. Then we're going to chapter 5. Now, chapter 5 has got 2 different things that are in here. And they are conditional statements and loops. Conditional statements, you've already been using a little bit. That's that if statement. And we'll also talk about how you can use a switch. And we'll go into loops. They're going to talk about 3 types of loops. There's really more than that. But they're the 3 that you're going to use the most often. So what we will do, and the way I want to show you this stuff, is on Friday, we'll go back to that last payroll program that we did as a class, and we'll start adding some stuff to it. All right? And then, if we get through on Friday both of those, there's a pretty good chance that Monday and Tuesday of next week, and I'm sorry, not next week because we don't have class Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday of next week will both be labs. You will get another assignment. You'll have time to work on it. Thursday, I'll give you another one of these pre-tests. And then Friday, you will take a test on that. So in an ideal world, by the end of next week, we'll be through the first 5 chapters. And again, as we're going through this, especially you new people, if when we go through it, if I find out, and I don't think this is going to happen, but let's say these people all get 90 to 100, you all get zeros, well, then something's going wrong. All right? But if you are having a problem understanding stuff, you're going to have to let me know, and that goes for anybody in here. Again, I talked to Angie yesterday, and she said she'll be more than happy to come in here to work with people. She'll be more than happy to work, try to arrange a time where she can work online with people. All right. So if that's a situation for you. But again, I'm not trying to rush through this stuff, but the faster we go through it, kind of the more elementary stuff, the more time we'll have to spend on the more difficult stuff. We're going to spend probably the first 4 weeks or so when we get back from the break just on these chapters. We may have only one test in there, but we're going to be writing applications. What I want to be able to do is have us go in and create a database, and let's say we put 10 employees in there. I want to be able to pre-populate. So when we bring up our form, we've got the first employee in there. We can make changes to his or her information, save them, boom, it'll be saved right back to the database. I'll show you another view that you can put in where we can see all 10 employees at one time, and it'll look like a spreadsheet. Now, if you say, I have no idea what a database is, that's why it's going to take us a few weeks to go through that. All right, I'm going to have you, at that time, you will download one more piece of software. It's not real big, all right, and it'll just make it easier for us to work with stuff. We're not going to do it now, all right? So when I started this, I didn't know today when we started to go through this stuff, how much of this I wanted to go through as far as introducing loops and the like, and I just decided as I was doing it, I don't want to do that because I don't want to confuse anybody. My goal is for you to take this test tomorrow and have there be 8 scores of 100. All right. I had a teacher, a guy who was kind of a mentor to me when I started teaching many years ago. And he said, hey, I noticed, how'd your class do on the test yesterday? And I said, well, I got 20 students. The average grade was about a 93. They did really well. A couple students struggled. There were several 100s. And he goes, really? I said, yeah. And he said, well, I consider it to be a bad test if any student gets 100. And I said, well, why is that? He said, then it probably wasn't challenging enough. That could be true. All right. I said, well, to me, it says if they got 100, I'm doing my job because they're understanding it. All right. It's just 2 different opinions on this. But again, you might be taking this test tomorrow and think, why are we even doing this? This is so simple. It's the first one. As you probably guess, they're going to get harder. I always say there's no such thing as a dumb question, but the best one I can think of that I was ever asked was in class one day after they took their first test. A young lady raised her hand. It was very serious. Is this stuff going to get harder? And I thought, wow, how do I even answer that? I could be a smart aleck and say, no, we do the hard stuff first and it gets easier. And I thought, no, she'd probably believe that. All right. And so I just said, yeah, because it does. You can see the stuff, or you saw it where I just showed it to you. I would strongly suggest that you at least page through the book before the test. All right, these tests, these are hands-on, and hands-on tests, those tests will never ask you a question that's true, false, multiple choice, none of that stuff. It's all write this program. Every test is going to be that way. On the other hand, and you saw this a little earlier, but just to show you one more time, all right, in here. So again, if you grab any one of these written tests, this is what they're going to look like. So you notice in this case, there's 10 short answers, and there's about 14 multiple choice. As you start working on these, I've got the keys. Sometimes I have to look up the answer. I don't know maybe what they're asking or whatever, but if you've got a question, if you're like, don't sit there and spend hours upon hours looking for a question. Because if you've got that question, probably everybody does. So I'll go over it in the class. Maybe I didn't do a good enough job of going over that particular point. All right. So we're done a lot earlier than I thought we'd be, but you've got about an hour and 20 minutes. If you didn't get a chance to finish, then hopefully you've got a chance to finish this stuff now. All right. But again, 2 more last things. First of all, tomorrow, what I'd like you to do is in here, when you start to do this, is I want you to come in. I'm going to just, I may have a folder like this already, but I'm going to close my solution. All right. So I'd like you, when you start tomorrow, to come in and create a new project. All right. And when you do this, again, there'll be 3 of them. They'll all be consoles. So I'm going to go to console and I'm going to go to next. And I think he tells you to call them EX1, EX2, and EX3, which are silly names, but I don't care. So EX1, but I'm going to say put this into a solution named hot, hands-on tests or hots, it doesn't matter, and save those to your desktop. Notice that's what mine says. So EX1 hot and create. All right, there it is. Then when you get done with the first one, you will right mouse click on here, choose add, choose new project. It'll again be a console. It'll again be next, and this will be EX2. It'll already be in the hot. So create. Now I've got the second one. I'm going to close both these up. Right mouse click one more time, do an add, do another new project, again this, again next, and EX3. All right, and I've got those here. Now I'm going to go back tonight and I'm going to go watch that tape again, but just to show you what you can do with this. So if we have problems with this, what I'm about to show you right now, all of you, this should work. All right, so I'm taking for granted that you three have been able to get into GitHub and set up accounts for yourselves. All right, but if I go over into mine, so if I go into my GitHub account, I can now get to it and do some things with it at least. So now if I go in there to my repositories, this is what I wanted to do initially with you guys. I don't want that. Let's see. I want your repositories. Now there is a repository. See that name? That's your folder that you've got on your flash drive. That's where I wanted to put it, was on here. Because if you click here, that's all the stuff that you have on the flash drive. Now, let's pretend for a second that you lose the flash drive and you really want this stuff. Now what you're able to do is you can bring up my repository. It's public. At least I believe I made it public. All right. So it'll be github.com/jpscottrankin/AWD this right here. So let's say you bring it up and now you've got this. Well, that's fine. What the heck do I do with it? All right. You can click here where it says code. You can click download zip, and basically it'll give you the same zip file that I unzipped and put onto your machines yesterday. So you can get stuff from my repo. Why, who cares? Why am I even showing you that? I want to show you that if all else fails tomorrow, notice that right now, see this? Everybody see how I've got a folder in here now called hot? Can you all see that? All right. I'm going to come back in here into GitHub, and I'm doing it probably the hardest way possible, but at least it should work. I'm going to go and click on this plus sign. Right there, I'm going to choose new repository, and I'm going to call it hot, H-O-T, just hot, just like that. In fact, I think I called it hot. How did I do it here? I called it hots. No, is that the one? That isn't it. It is called hot, and they're all capitalized. I like to keep everything the same case. All right, so I'm going to come into here, and there it is, hot. It says that name's available. If I already had one like that, I would get an error message. All right, it wouldn't let me do it. Notice it's public. All right, that's yours. You're going to want to make private. Okay, but you'll have to do what's called give me an invite to yours. But I'm just going to leave it public for right now, just so you see this. All right, and I'm going to click create repository. And what it does here is it creates it. It gives me the address of where that repository lives, and it even tells me what I have to, for lack of better words, pretty much key in to get this to work. For those of you in here, they have changed it. People found the word master to be very profane, for lack of better words, so they've changed it from master to main, and right now it expects you're going to use main rather than master in here. But I'm going to grab these commands, and I'm going to throw them onto here just so you see them. So there they are. This basically says I want to initiate or create a Git session. All right? This you don't even need to do. I don't know why they put that add to readme in there. You could put it in there, but there's no real reason to do that. This, after you do this, you really should type in this, Git Status. And that'll show you what you're able to basically put into your repository. All right. This, when it says Git commit, no, there's another step in here. You want to actually say, and I'll run this off if you want it, Git add period. That means add everything to my repo. I'm going to show you these steps in just a minute. This says to commit, and you can commit as many times as you want, but you should have a different message in here every time you commit. All right. A lot of times what people do rather than first commit is they'll just type in here initial commit. You see that a lot. This sets up a branch, but you really don't even have to do this. This is the key line. This line is associating your local Git repository with the one that's out on GitHub. And this says to take everything that's able to be copied from your current, the one that's on your desktop, into GitHub. So I'm going to quickly run through those steps with you. All right. So again, the way I'm showing it to you, there's better ways of doing it, but this should work. So I'm going to come into here. I do not have a folder that says Git right here. There is not one. So I'm going to right mouse click here, and I'm going to choose Git bash here. And I'm going to type into here. This I can make nice and big so you can read it. So I'm going to come into here, and I'm going to type in Git. Right now, if I type in Git status, I get an error message because I don't have anything made yet. All right. So I want to make something. So I'm going to come in and type in Git Init. And notice after I hit enter, watch what happens in here. I've got now 1, 2, 3, 4 folders. I now have 5 folders. I've got one that's called .git. Now I want to show you, in case you haven't seen it, how you can make sure that shows those dot folders. So now I've got that in there. So I'm going to just clear the screen so you can keep seeing what I'm doing here. And I'm going to type in this, Git Status. And it says this is what I have in red right now. That means that it's on my local machine, and that's the only place it is. Are you with me? That's what it's telling me. So I'm going to type in git space add space dot and hit enter. Nothing magical happens. Except, see these things right here? If I type in Git Status again, notice how they're all green? That means they've been what's called staged, and they're ready for me to move them. So now I've got to commit them. So I type in git space commit space -m space, if it's my first one, initial commit. And I hit enter. And it's telling me all the stuff that it's about to do. I don't know what most of that is, and I don't care. All right. But now if I do another Git Status, it's telling me there's nothing to commit because everything's ready to go. All right. So now I'm down to here. So I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, and I've done this. I don't think I need to do the branch because branch is if other people are, you're going to be sharing it with other people. Typically, that's what you use branches for, but I'll put it in there anyway. It won't hurt anything. All right, so I will put that in, and I believe all that does is it gives me back my prompt. That's it. All right, so I'm going to clear the screen again, just so you can see exactly where I am. So I'm down to here. This again is the magic line right here. So I'm going to copy that. When you paste stuff into here, when you paste stuff in, you listening? Don't do a Control V because it doesn't understand it. Use your right mouse and choose paste. All right. Then it comes in here. Again, nothing magic happened. I just got my prompt back. So now I want to try to push it. And I hit enter. And it may take anywhere, depending if you got a slow machine, it may take 30 seconds to 2 or 3 minutes, maybe even 5 minutes. All right. I will tell you that if on your machine you're using OneDrive, it can be a little problematic. All right. I'm hoping it's not, if that's what you have. I believe it's done, but I'm going to check. Yep, I'm done. So how do I know I'm done? Well, I'm going to go back into GitHub. Right there. And where it says this, all I do is I refresh my page, and I should now have a new repository. If you look in here, there's EX1, EX2, and EX3. And if I go over here and I check your repositories, my first one now is HOT. All right. Now, what I should have done and didn't do was done a better job of organizing that thing for you. But to me, I would like you to create 3 of these repositories. Again, one called hot or hots, whatever you want, one called labs, and one called homework. In fact, 4 of them, one called written tests. And then you'll push the stuff up to those repositories. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, I'm having you do that as opposed to just having one giant repository with all 4 of those things in there. All right, and hopefully you saw that and it worked. Now, right now, none of those programs are going to do very much. All right, but if you wanted those right now, since I made it private or public rather, you could go to code. You'd have to go into github.com/jpscottrankin/hot. You'd go to code. You'd go to download zip, and there it is. It calls it hot main, all right, instead of hot, but you can change that if you want to. That's all you got to do. Now, hopefully that made some sense. All right, just in case it didn't, or just in case you have any problems tomorrow, please bring that flash drive with you, because what I'm going to ask tomorrow, I'm going to look around, and if it's 11 o'clock and it looks like everybody's done, let's just say that happens, I'm going to say, hey, was everybody able to push this to your Git repository? And if you say yeah, then I will show you at that time, and you can see it on here. All right, and this is called how to give a Git repo. It's like invitation or something like that. How to give a private. I want when you create those, make all of them private, not public. All right. So how to give a private Git repo invitation. And one of these things in here tells how to do it. All right. It's right here. So you'll go to your repo, you'll click on settings. All right. And you'll click on collaborators, and guess what you'll put in there? JP Scott Rankin. That means you can look at it and I can look at it. I could change it. I will guarantee you I've never changed a lick, never a line of code in anybody's repo. That's your code. But it'll make it available for me to see. All that makes sense. But I will ask you to do that tomorrow. And then typically what I ask people to do too is once you've got it done, all right, and you said, yeah, I've sent you the invite and everything else, I should get an email. If I don't get an email, that means either you didn't send the invite right or something else is wrong. So if it's 11:45 tomorrow and some of you still haven't given me invites and I know you're done, I will ask you to look at this. If we can get that done, if you can create the repository, the hot repository, and push to it tomorrow, I don't need your flash drive. I just as soon not have any of your flash drives. All right, so that's my hope that we're able to do that in the future. So sorry that was longer than I thought. That's it. Like I said, you've got about an hour. Study, do whatever. And I think I was talking to the second year people yesterday. I'm telling you the same thing here. I am not, I would imagine most of you are taking at least one other class, an online class or whatever. You want to work on that here, you're not offending me at all. All right? All right, that's all I've got then. Unless there are any questions. Okay.